Welcome to another edition of Red Meat. We are 2 weeks away from Election Day. I'm Jim Geraghty along with Mark Hemingway. We have a fired up edition because a couple of really interesting developments in the race that I can't wait to chew over. The first is, God love him, Joe Biden, Scranton, PA boy, speaking to a bunch of donors to Obama in Seattle over the weekend. And he makes this very strange comment that says Obama is going to be tested by perhaps a manufactured crisis, and sooner than Kennedy, within the first 6 months of that election, been the buzz of the blogosphere, and it's starting to break through. You're seeing McCain and Palin cite this on the campaign trail. Mark, does Biden need to pee in a cup again? Is he kind of losing his mind, or was this the Kinsey gaffe in which he was being honest?
Well, the idea that this is going to be a manufactured crisis or whatever to test Obama, I mean, is just nuts. And secondarily, I think if you're going to make this argument, it doesn't help Obama, all right? If some terrorist group wants to go out there and plan an attack because they want to test Obama to see whether he's weak or not, that makes the case to vote for McCain, because everybody's pretty sure we know what McCain's going to do if there's another terrorist attack or something like that. But on the other hand, I mean, there's a lot of crises we already know about. I mean, the global security situation isn't getting any safer. The economic situation isn't getting any better. What does he think is going to happen here, that somehow this is going to be manufactured so it's worse? Well,
when he said manufactured, I took that as a sign that somebody was going to start a fight, start some sort of conflict, start some sort of crisis or issue that wouldn't have arisen earlier. You think Putin, you think maybe China, Chavez, or Ahmadinejad in Iran. It could be, could Hezbollah just start lobbing missiles into Israel again?
Fine. Let's just cut to the chase. Does the manufactured part even matter?
Okay.
I mean, if a comet hits Nebraska, that's going to be the Republicans' fault, as far as I can tell. That's essentially what Joe Biden is saying. Well, don't fault us, if things are really rocky in the first term, because we just walked into this.
Interesting. I kind of look at that as, because other of his comments that followed up on that were a bit on the preparation side of, at times our decisions are not going to seem that popular at the time or something like that. It really seemed to be either somebody had shot him full of sodium pentothal, or as traditional of Joe Biden, the mouth was open and letting out whatever was in his mind without any filter or anything. But this was a strangely cautious and pessimistic Biden, a very strange message to send to a fundraiser.
In other words, well, it's good to know that he doesn't expect the unmitigated adulation once he's in office that he's been experiencing as part of the Obama candidacy.
Yeah, well, I mean, if nothing else, we thank you, Joe Biden.
Newsflash to people voting for Obama: you might be disappointed once he gets in office. I'm just going to throw that out there. He may not do everything that you want him to do.
I myself am looking forward to having my water turned into wine by the new president. Looking at the other vice presidential nominee, Sarah Palin, you noticed an interesting trend in the coverage of her the last couple of days. Why don't you describe what was it?
Well, it just seems like that there's an attempt to sort of, well, I hate to say rehabilitate, because I feel like a lot of what happened to her was unfair to begin with. But certainly in the past couple of days, the press access to her has opened up. She appeared on Saturday Night Live. I mean, and I think this is partly a sense that the race is doing so much better for Obama that initially when she was introduced, she was seen as such a threat that everyone was like, we must destroy her. So now all of a sudden, after a month, her favorables have been knocked down. They're willing to go out there and say, okay, well, maybe she's not so bad. But the timing of this is, of course, just really unfortunate. Christopher Hitchens had a piece on Slate yesterday where he said the press should stop covering Palin, until she gives a press conference. Well, it turns out she's, given 3, and CBS did a nice report. Now, Joe Biden hasn't given a press conference in over a month. Barack Obama hadn't given one in weeks. And Palin had been available to reporters like nonstop for the last 3 days leading up to that.
These various little press availabilities in a very short time, going from the least accessible candidate to the most. It raised kind of something interesting. We heard from someone who was describing the phenomenon of the Straight Talk Express for McCain early in his primary. And how he'd let reporters onto the bus, and he'd answer just about any question, and that generally that worked out very well. But there was this unwritten rule on the Straight Talk Express that if McCain, said Czechoslovakia and he meant Czech Republic, or made some sort of very understandable slip of the tongue, that reporters were kind of, just overlook it and kind of, let it pass and focus on the meat of what he was saying. Strangely enough, as soon as you start putting other bloggers and you end up in this very different campaign environment, every little item gets blown up into a major story, and it's up on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And you notice McCain doesn't do that anymore. The availability isn't at the same level. Now, if the press wants to complain about lack of access to the candidates, I think to a certain extent is if you take every little slip of the tongue and turn it into this massive story, well, reporters are just, the politicians will not hang around you anymore. That it'll be too risky.
No, it's absolutely true. And I was supposed to say, I was on the Straight Talk Express in January. I was out covering the Michigan primary, and it really struck me then. And the funny thing was, this was still shortly after the magazine that you and I had worked for endorsed Mitt Romney in the primaries, and a decision that neither of us had anything to do with or any foreknowledge of whatsoever. And I had to spend about an hour talking my way on the McCain campaign bus. They did not want to let a National Review journalist on there, perhaps because they're a bit sore about it or whatever. They finally did. They were gracious about it and very nice about it once it happened. But then I get on there, and I spent 2 hours watching Joe Klein cozy up to McCain in the back of the Straight Talk Express. Now, given the way Joe Klein has now covered McCain in this primary, I mean, back in January, back before Obama was, the Obama question was settled and everyone was getting behind him, I'm pretty sure Joe Klein would have given McCain a tongue bath if he'd asked him to, the back of the Straight Talk Express that day back in January. Now, looking back on it, doesn't it seem like an awful strange choice in the McCain campaign that they'd be letting Joe Klein waltz onto the back of the Straight Talk Express, and yet National Review it's a little bit of a hassle?
Glad to see all of that warming up and all that working the press they did is paying off.
For the record, I'm not bitter about this. I'm
just
throwing it out there.
No reason to be bitter. I'm bitter over you putting the image of Joe Klein giving John McCain a tongue bath in my head. That's going to make me a bitter cleaner.
Right. Well, after Larry Flint gets done with Sarah Palin, we can.
Oh, all right, please. Moving on to the third topic, kind of our wrap-up. Speaking of bitter clinging, I'm going to be bitterly clinging to my meager paycheck if an Obama administration comes to pass. And what's kind of intriguing is there was an interesting item in today's Paul Krugman column in the New York Times where he says he's trying to defend Obama, and he emphasizes Obama proposing raising taxes on only the top 2 income tax brackets, and the second highest bracket at the head of household starts at an income after deductions of $182,400 a year. Now, at first glance, you say, well, there you go. And then, wait a minute. Every 5 minutes, we're reminded that Barack Obama is only going to raise taxes on people making $250,000 a year. Now, this definition of rich keeps sliding. Most people would think, a millionaire. And then you get down to $250,000 a year. And now we're down to 182. And this was the point of Joe the Plumber. Hey, wait a minute. When does rich stop being rich?
Well, that was exactly Joe the Plumber's point. Everyone immediately pointed out, well, he doesn't make $250,000 a year, and his point was that I'd like to someday. And then he said even after that, he specifically said, I am worried that they're going to define that number down because it seems like just an arbitrary figure. I remember again, McCain got pilloried during the Saddleback Forum, where he just threw out that random number about defining rich order because. It was not the best way for McCain to handle that, but McCain was making the salient point that your definition of rich is extremely arbitrary, and that policymakers can't just decide you're rich and you're not without judging the external factors involved. So, what does that mean for how you make policy? If you approach things that way, that means that you're going to try and keep the tax burden down for everybody. The fact of the matter is you want a government with a light footprint, and I don't know if distributing wealth in this haphazard way, where you're not sure whose wealth and how much of it you're going to redistribute, as apparently Obama is not sure of, is the best way to go about things.
The light footprint just crushed through the floorboards. Just kind of one more note that I'm just kind of thinking of this and realizing Bill Clinton ran on a middle-class tax cut. If you go back to press archives of January 1993, first thing out the door, clattering out the window as he said, the deficit is a lot worse than I thought. I can't give that middle-class tax cut. All the tax hikes he proposed did go through. Something to think about. But anyway, this has been an enjoyable and, as you can tell, fired up edition. We apologize for that image of John McCain and Joe Klein that we try to erase out of all of our collective memory banks. But beyond that, we'll probably be back later this week. So keep it here on National Review's The Corner and at YouTube. And see you around 2 weeks till Election Day.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.